The moment I slid that eviction notice under their door, I felt a weight lift that had crushed me for decades. They thought they owned my life, my choices, even my keys. But today, they found out exactly what it feels like to be locked out, not just from my apartment, but from the life I'd fought so desperately to build for myself. This wasn't just a piece of paper, it was my declaration of independence, a final, brutal truth delivered with a silent, devastating force. For 35 seconds, I stood there, heart pounding, picturing their faces as they'd discover it, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. It was a victory, hard won and soaked in years of silent tears. This is my story, a story of breaking free. Before I dive deeper, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Let me know in the comments below. And if you find yourself nodding along, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world, and it helps me share these raw, true stories. My parents weren't monsters, not in the way you'd typically imagine. They were suffocating. From the moment I was old enough to form my own thoughts, those thoughts were scrutinized, judged, and often overridden. My childhood home wasn't a sanctuary, it was a gilded cage with invisible bars. Every choice, from the clothes I wore to the friends I made, was subject to their approval, and disapproval was swift and absolute. Privacy was a foreign concept. My diary was a public record, my phone calls monitored, my room searched for signs of trouble. I remember once, at age 10, I tried to lock my bedroom door. My mother, with a chillingly calm smile, simply unscrewed the lock from the outside. "There are no secrets in this family, darling," she'd said, and that sentence became the mantra of my existence. When I left for college, 1,000 miles away, it was supposed to be my escape. I pictured freedom, independence, a life where I could finally breathe. For a glorious few weeks, I did. Then the unannounced visits began. My mother would show up, suitcase in hand, claiming she was just in the area or worried I wasn't eating enough. She'd rearrange my dorm room, go through my laundry, even sit in on my classes, claiming she was just observing. The humiliation was excruciating. My roommates would exchange bewildered glances, and I'd just shrink into myself, a knot of shame tightening in my stomach. I tried to set boundaries, gently at first. "Mom, I love you, but I need my space." Her response was always the same, a wounded expression, a sigh, and the inevitable accusation of being ungrateful, of pushing away the people who loved me most. "We just care about you, sweetie. No one will ever care for you like your own parents." And the guilt, that heavy, suffocating blanket of guilt, would wrap around me, silencing my protests. After college, I got a job in a different city, thinking that a full-fledged adult life would finally grant me the autonomy I craved. I found a small apartment, my first real home. I changed the locks immediately, a symbolic act of defiance that sent a thrill through me. For a few months, it was blissful. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, ate what I wanted, came and went as I pleased. The silence wasn't empty. It was a balm, a testament to my newfound peace. But then, the subtle signs began. A cabinet door left ajar that I swore I'd closed. My favorite coffee mug in the dish rack, even though I'd used a different one that morning. A plant slightly moved. My heart would pound, a cold dread creeping up my spine. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was forgetful. Maybe I was paranoid. But the incidents grew more frequent, more blatant. Food would disappear from my fridge. My mail would be opened, the envelopes carefully resealed. Once, I came home to find a new set of curtains hanging in my living room, chosen by my mother, who had decided my old ones were drab. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless, trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. When I confronted them, phone shaking in my hand, they'd deny it vehemently. "We would never. How could you accuse us?" Or, if undeniable proof emerged, they'd pivot to concern. "We were just worried about you, dear. We hadn't heard from you in a few days. We had to make sure you were all right." And the keys? They'd either claim I'd given them a spare or that they'd made a copy just in case of an emergency. My emergencies apparently included drab curtains and an empty cookie jar. The sacrifices I made in silence were immeasurable. My social life withered. I stopped inviting friends over, terrified they'd walk in on my parents rummaging through my belongings. Dating became impossible. How do you explain to someone that your parents might, literally, break into your apartment while you're on a date, or worse, during an intimate moment? The anxiety was a constant companion, a tightening knot in my stomach that never truly loosened. I couldn't relax in my own home. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow, every sound became a potential threat. My sanctuary had become a surveillance state, and I was the prisoner. I installed security cameras, hidden ones, hoping to catch them in the act. And I did. I saw them clear as day, using a spare key, letting themselves in, going through my drawers, reading my private papers. The footage was damning, but when I showed it to them, they left. "Oh, darling, we were just checking on you, making sure everything was okay. You worry too much." The gaslighting was relentless, chipping away at my sanity, making me question my own reality. It was a vicious cycle of invasion, confrontation, denial, and then the inevitable, deeper invasion. The humiliation was a constant, burning ember in my chest. To be a grown woman, independent in every other aspect of my life, yet completely stripped of agency within my own four walls, was soul-crushing. I felt like a child, perpetually grounded, perpetually supervised. It wasn't just about the physical intrusion, it was about the violation of trust, the complete disregard for my boundaries, for my personhood. They saw me as an extension of themselves, a project to be managed, not an individual to be respected. The pain of that realization that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were actively undermining my well-being was a heavy burden. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count, feeling utterly alone, trapped, and desperate for a way out. I changed the locks again, but they found a way. A locksmith they knew, a hidden spare key they'd made years ago and forgotten to give back. The excuses were endless, and the result was always the same. My apartment was never truly mine. The final straw came not with a grand gesture, but with a whisper. I'd been seeing someone, Mark, for a few months. He was kind, understanding, and for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope that I could build a normal relationship. I'd carefully, painstakingly introduced him to my parents, hoping that perhaps, with a new person in my life, they might finally understand the need for space. They smiled, they charmed, they seemed perfectly normal. A week later, Mark called me, his voice strained. He'd received an anonymous email filled with fabricated stories about my past relationships, my supposed unstable nature, and warnings about my tendency to push away those who truly care. It was a vicious, calculated attack designed to sabotage us. The email address was untraceable, but I knew. I knew in my gut. No one else had access to those old, private details. No one else had the motive. My parents had gone through my old journals, my old emails, and used my deepest vulnerabilities as weapons. Mark, understandably, was rattled. He didn't break up with me then, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and our fragile connection began to fray. That was it. That was the moment the last thread of filial obligation snapped. The tears I cried that night weren't of sorrow, but of cold, hard fury. They hadn't just invaded my home, they had invaded my heart, my future, my chance at happiness. I looked at the security footage, replayed their smiling faces as they entered my apartment, knowing exactly what they were doing, and a switch flipped inside me. I was done being the victim. I was done making sacrifices. I was going to disappear. The planning was meticulous, a clandestine operation worthy of a spy novel. I started researching new apartments in a different neighborhood, far enough away that they wouldn't stumble upon it, close enough to my job. I paid for everything in cash or through a new separate bank account they didn't know about. I packed my belongings in unmarked boxes, telling friends I was just decluttering, sending old items to charity. I took days off work, claiming illness, to arrange the move. I didn't tell a soul, not even my closest friend, fearing any slip of information could somehow reach them. The tension during those weeks was unbearable. Every phone call from my parents, every just checking in text felt like a threat. I'd force a cheerful tone into my voice, pretending everything was normal, all while my stomach churned with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. The day of the move was a blur of frantic activity. I hired movers from a company far out of town, making sure they knew absolutely nothing about my family situation. My new apartment was small, but it was mine. The moment the last box was inside and I turned the key in the lock, truly, irrevocably, for the first time in my life, I felt a profound sense of peace. It was a silence I hadn't known could exist,